Welcome to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast where we discuss tips, tricks, and current topics related to all things in the blind and partially sighted community. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the founder of Blind Beginnings and your host, Shawn Marcellet, and whatever co-host is on this week. Now, here's your host, Shawn.
I'm Shawn Marcellet, and you're listening to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. And my co-host today is Kolby. Welcome, Kolby.
Hi.
And Kolby, do you want to tell our listeners who our guest is today?
Yeah, so I'm super excited for today's interview. Today we have Jugpreet, and he's a musician, performer, and all around a super cool dude.
Awesome.
Juggy, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. And it's great to be on here. Obviously, Blind Beginnings is huge, and such a pleasure to be on with you guys.
I don't think anyone's ever said Blind Beginnings is huge before. Thank you.
No, absolutely. No, I think the work that you guys are doing is amazing, and just to reach out and definitely going to the gala and the trivia night shows the growth of Blind Beginnings, because I remember I also have performed, and just to see where it's where it came from and how much it's grown. I mean, that's a huge props to you as well, Shawn and Kolby and the whole team that's worked on this to promote the positivity and peace and love, and just kind of showing what blindness is all about.
Thank you. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your vision before we launch into your famous performing career?
Well, so I had retinoblastoma eye cancer when I was only 6 months old. So they ended up having to remove both of my eyes. And since then I'm totally blind. And yeah, that's basically how I lost my vision. So I've been blind my whole life, essentially.
Okay, so I know you were talented musically talented from a very young age. Was this always your plan to be a performer?
Yeah, I you know what? When I started off with music, it was a healing thing for me, because when I was growing up in the culture that I was growing up in, often people would say, especially in our community, oh, what are you going to do in life? And where are you going to go? And there was a lot of bullying that I had to experience as well. But with that, actually, I learned quite a bit about myself and quite a bit about what really, made me connect with people. And that was music. And I think that was from an early age, because my mom used to sing quite a bit. My dad's a lyricist. My brother's been playing drums for a long time, and my sister is a dancer. My brother and sister are both dancers. So music was always engraved in our family a lot, in a lot of ways. So, for me, I think when I started, my first performance was at the age of 6, and it was in Squamish for Canada Day. And I just remember going up on stage and, singing my heart out, and the encouragement that I received from people. It was so beautiful. And I think that's really what launched that dream for me. And I've really never looked back ever since then. And, by God's grace, I've been able to do a lot of different things. So I'm definitely really, happy about the accomplishments, and just knowing that this is just the beginning for me, and but also seeing the amount of accomplishments I have been able to achieve by God's grace. I mean, it's unbelievable, and that couldn't have happened without the support of my family and my friends, and obviously people within the blind community as well.
6 years old for your first performance. Do you remember that? Were you intimidated like that? I just can't even imagine. I have a 6-year-old son myself right now, and I can't imagine him getting up on a stage at, a Canada Day celebration in front of probably thousands of people. What was that like?
It's so interesting, because when you're a kid, you're kind of oblivious. Sometimes, they say you're kind of young and dumb, and you just don't know any better. You just want to get up there and grab a mic and just start singing for people. And sure, I think maybe there was a bit of nervousness, but once you actually start singing, it really just, all the emotions and all that passion that you have for music, it just really takes over for sure.
So I'm interested, like you said that your family is quite musical as well.
Yeah.
So do you play any instruments?
So normally, I mean, primarily I'm a vocalist, but I do play harmonium. I've played tabla. I've played trombone in the past when I was in high school band as well. So when I was doing that for quite a few years there, and then I started really getting into guitar recently. So and obviously I play the piano a little bit as well. So just trying to keep my options open, but primarily just really into the vocal side of things, and just really concentrating on being more of a versatile artist as best I can. I did my Western classical music diploma at Capilano University in North Vancouver, and then I did my Indian classical music degree from the University of Punjab in India. So I think that really has helped me polish my vocal craft. But there's always room to obviously improve every day. So that's what I'm just trying to continue to do.
How would you describe your music to our listeners who maybe haven't heard of you before?
Yeah, so primarily I'm more into the Bollywood genres of music. So you got, because I'm a Bollywood singer, primarily, I definitely try to be as versatile, but I think my main genre would be like romantic stuff, or sad romantic songs, or poppy stuff, or I've really gotten into more country as well. So I definitely try to keep my options open when it comes to that, but definitely I think like I would consider myself more of a pop artist, but I definitely try to branch out into other genres, because I think in this day and age, it's really important to try and experiment as best you can to bring something different to your music each time you do it. And with Bollywood music, because you're singing in Bollywood films, and each film that you sing in, there's different settings. So like, let's say if they're shooting in Paris, or let's say if they're shooting in Dubai, you're gonna have to learn Middle Eastern type vocals, and or else if they're shooting out in Los Angeles, then you kind of have the typical Western R&B type, or or rock stuff. So I really try to do the best I can in terms of opening myself up to different genres and different styles of music, so that I can give my best every time I record for films, or even if I do my own projects, because I'm a composer myself.
Mm-hmm. I have to ask, I know you perform a lot in India and you're really famous there. Have you performed country music in India? I feel like those two things seem very disconnected.
You know what? Actually, it's really interesting that you say that, because I think India in general now has definitely started to have a lot of artists from the Western Hemisphere that visit India now. And recently we've had not so much country artists, but recently we've had Ed Sheeran, Justin Bieber, Jay-Z, and pretty world-renowned artists. And I think country is a really universal genre for me, simply because the lyrics are so beautiful. I mean, a lot of the country songs that we listen to, they have some sort of melody that or that lyrical feel to them that everyone can understand, and I think and they're very clean lyrics. They're very related to life. So
they tell a story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's my favorite part.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds like you really you traveled a lot and sung in many places. What would you say the most challenging thing you've encountered while traveling internationally and as a blind person?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think traveling in general is one of my huge hobbies that I love to do. I love to travel, and anytime I've traveled internationally for performances, I've been very lucky to have my dad with me. And so, I mean, that definitely makes things 100 times easier to travel to different places, and especially in countries where it's not as accessible for people who can't see or who are blind, and so on and so forth. But however, I will say this: living in India actually really taught me a lot about myself, in the sense that I had to do some things by myself. I had to travel places. Some would say well, it's so inaccessible. Like, how do you do it? And my main thing is that now, especially with Uber, that's being introduced in India, it's actually really easy to get around, because you can just take an Uber, and then I can send the location to someone, so at least they know that I'm on my way, or at least they can see the map to make sure that the driver isn't taking me to the wrong place or whatever. So I think in that way, I think the accessibility has improved a little bit. And I think in certain environments where you have to adapt, you definitely do have to find certain ways to travel and certain ways to get around things. And I think India really taught me a lot that, like, if I really put my mind to it, I can definitely adapt to this environment. And, if I had to live here, although, I love my city of Vancouver, because it's definitely where I grew up. But living out in India obviously shows you, actually gave me a lot of strength to realize, that there's so much more potential there. There's so much more that I can figure out when I'm traveling.
I'm curious about just getting on a stage or navigating around. Like, I'm thinking of mobility on a much smaller scale, but a much scarier scale. You've got like tons of people watching you. Do you have your cane when you're performing? Do you dance? Do you move around? Have you ever fallen off the stage? Like, is that something that is stressful for you?
Oh my goodness. The amount of times I've not fallen off stage, have really gotten close to falling off stage, it's ridiculous. It's never, to this day, it's never happened. But there's certain times where I'll be right at the edge, and then someone will just rush in and push me back, go, 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 go. But it's actually really funny, because when I'm on stages like that, when you're performing in front of a lot of people, sometimes the energy is so much that you tend to, especially with me, I do have good spatial awareness, and I don't usually carry a cane with me on stage. But I sometimes what ends up happening is that I kind of move a bit too forward, and then I definitely try to balance that out now, so that I'm not moving too forward, or I'm not. I'm definitely trying to learn more dance, though, for sure, because I think that is also quite important too, is to have more of a performance element to it, if possible. And I think the competition. So I was in a competition that's called Saregama, which is equivalent to American Idol, but it was in India, and it broadcasted in 165 different countries. Wow. And out of 150,000 contestants, by God's grace, I made it to the top 3. And I think that was such a huge experience for me, because not only was I performing in front of a big audience, and in front of millions and millions of people that are watching you on television, but I was also performing in front of the not only India's best, but the world's best. So you had people from around the world, from Hollywood, and there were 34 judges that would constantly judge you on your performance. And
wow, sounds awful.
You know what, though? It was such a good experience, because you had all these different people. You had sound engineers that were listening to how you used your dynamics. You had lyric writers that looked at your pronunciation. You had people who are singers that really concentrated on your notes. So, I think for me, I think that was so important because it actually really made me learn so much about, different places. Okay, like where am I going flat here? Where am I going sharp here? And to make it to the top 3 in a competition like that, I mean, and to a grand finale like that it's an unbelievable feeling because, coming from Canada and moving out to India for that was such an interesting experience, and just to take that all in, and everyone was so supportive. I think we were all a family at the end of the day, which made it less nerve-wracking, and didn't mean it wasn't nerve-wracking at all though.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you definitely learn from those experiences, and I'm so humbled that I was able to do that.
Did you get coaching on your stage presence then as part of that as well?
We definitely got a bit of coaching on our stage presence, but it was more through the science of feng shui. So we had like someone who would come in and start, talking about how we can exhibit different auras, and India is really, crazy about that kind of stuff too. So, we definitely learned about that, and different stage presence techniques for sure. We learned about, we obviously got vocal coaching. And, the interesting thing about competitions like this, when they're on a large scale, is that there's 2 episodes shot every week, and those 2 episodes are shot in one day. So what ends up happening is sometimes you're at the studio or at the shoot for 24 hours because
wow.
The episodes themselves take like 12 hours to shoot. And sometimes I'd be singing at 4 a.m. the next day. Like say if I was there at 7 a.m, sometimes I wouldn't be singing until 4 a.m. the next day. And it's unbelievable that I was able to get performer of the day quite a few times because to be in that environment when you're so tired and you got to show that you're energetic. It's like, bro, it's 4 a.m. the next day. Like, I don't know if I can actually do this right now. Like it's definitely crazy. But, I think that was certainly something that has made us even better musicians. Like all of the contestants that were on there, they were all so unbelievable. And they all really helped in providing that energy and that support for each other.
So you mentioned that your brother and sister are both dancers. Have they tried to help you with your dance moves? Because I know it can be challenging myself learning to dance.
Yeah.
I still don't feel comfortable. I don't know what everyone else is doing. So do I look like an idiot? People just say, just move your body, do what you feel. And then you do that and people laugh at you. So how have you gotten over that?
I just have this move. It's called the swag, where you just kind of sway side to side.
Okay. So you play it safe.
I play it safe.
Yeah.
The safe swag. That's what we can call it. It's the Blind Beginning signature move. No, but yeah. So, I honestly think though that there's this, definitely my brother and my sister have shown me moves, and I think I do definitely want to learn more for sure, because I think when it comes to performance and stuff, like I do actually want to have more energy on stage to kind of show that with my performing. But also, I mean, obviously singing is a huge part of it for sure too, right? You don't want to take away from that component either. And especially with singing, it's so hard to balance, because when you're dancing and singing at the same time, you got to really make sure that you're not out of breath and you're, balancing that so you're not dancing way too much, because otherwise your voice just kind of falters out.
Right.
So yeah, no, I'm definitely trying to learn more of that from them as well.
What are your plans? Like, are you planning to move to India and go big there? Or are you what are your plans?
That's such a great question. I do want to go back to India to kind of, start my career there and keep working there for sure. But with this COVID situation right now, and India's definitely got a lot of cases going on there now, and all of that. And I think for us musicians and for everyone in general, I mean, everyone has their own, financial constraints right now. But for musicians, we make a lot of our, income off shows, and
Right.
it's really difficult when we can't do that. So I think, I'm definitely just trying to prepare my own stuff. Like my dad writes most of my songs, and then I compose them. Either I write it and compose, or he writes and then I compose. And so basically I'm just trying to stockpile as many songs as I can, and then just kind of do my own projects in the meantime. And we'll see where it goes eventually. But, just to see that, like I said, the unbelievable response from everybody and the appreciation has been nothing short of amazing.
Have you done any virtual performances online?
Yes, actually, I do an Instagram live twice a week now. So I do like Instagram and Facebook live, and it's really handy when my dad and my sister can read out the comments on both the pages, and that certainly helps. And I think as a musician, and blind or not, I think it's really important to have a social media presence as well, because it really helps in engaging an audience. And definitely I'm trying to do some more live stuff for sure.
We're actually planning an online gala in the fall. I wonder if you would be willing
Nice.
to submit a song or two for us for that night.
Oh, I'd love to. I definitely love to. Yeah, we can totally chat about that. Because
Cool.
I've always wanted to do something with you guys again. So I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yes, because you performed at our very first gala. So you can
Yes.
perform
Wow,
at our,
really?
and then if you performed at our very first online gala, it just feels appropriate.
No, absolutely. No, it'd be a lot of fun for sure.
In case I forget to ask later, where can people find you on Instagram and social media?
So my Instagram handle is at Jugpreet. So Jug, as it's spelled, Jug, Preet, Preet, Bajwa, Bajwa. You can find me on Facebook, Jugpreet Bajwa Official. My Twitter is at Juggy Jag, so Juggyjag, and my YouTube is Jugpreet Bajwa Official, and that's where you'll find all my latest videos and everything.
Cool. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I've listened to a couple of the lives. It's really cool because I know, like, myself and one other person I know, we've requested songs, and Juggy performs them and does such a great job with them.
Oh, so you take
I
requests.
appreciate that. Thank
That's
you.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's fun because then you get to interact with fans, and you get to interact with your friends as well. You know what I mean? And so it's a good platform for everyone to kind of get together and just kind of have a jam out session in a lot of ways. So I definitely do enjoy that for sure. A huge part of that for me is to interact with people and get to know them better as well.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you have for a young person who's blind, who maybe is scared to take a risk and try something big or new?
My advice is just to follow your passion. You know what I mean? And follow what you feel is right for you. And I think just following your dream, and realizing that, sure, we do definitely have limitations, but that doesn't make things impossible. To use those limitations in a way to adapt to certain things, I think it's really a beautiful thing to use those limitations in that way, to adapt it to something that's that you can use to get through everyday life, but also enjoy everyday life, and that's why I say there's always endless possibilities, and there's always things that we can do to reach our goals and to reach our dreams. And no goal is too big or too small, right? Even if it's a short-term goal or a long-term goal. And sometimes, especially with us, there'll be times where we'll be knocked down, and we'll have to get back up again. And it's all about just continuing to do that, and dusting yourself off and keep continuing. And like they say, never let success get to your head. Never let failure get to your heart. And it's important to realize that you may have lost your eyesight, but you will never lose your vision. That's something that my family has really taught me. I've been really lucky to have the support of my family through that whole thing. So my advice would be is to just follow what makes you feel like you can achieve your goals. Follow that path, and eventually, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but there's always a way if you keep working towards that goal to get there.
I totally agree. In fact, my theme song is "I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down."
No,
have you ever performed that one?
I definitely love to learn that. And I think, Shawn, that's so important, for us to realize, because there's a lot of people that feel like, oh, because we have these certain limitations, we can't. How can we really get to our goal? Maybe, sure, it might take you longer. It might take you a little bit, like you may have to adapt in other ways, but that doesn't mean you can't ever get there. And that's the thing that we have to realize as well. And it's about fighting for yourself too. Sometimes there are people who will not understand what blindness is right away. And that's the beauty of this podcast, is to show what blindness is. And it's just merely just you losing your sight. The rest of our personality and who we are as people doesn't define who we are. Like, blindness does not define who we are in that way. Sure. Like in some way though, I would say that blindness is a trait, like Kolby mentioned to me once, which I found was so beautifully said, because it is a part of you. But it doesn't necessarily define the people that we are, in the sense that it shouldn't hinder us from doing a lot of the things that we want to do. Sure, we should take into account what our limitations are, but like I said, it's about taking those limitations and using them in a way to adapt to, like, for example, if I wanted to get into driving cars and all of that, maybe I can't drive cars, but what I could do is still stay in that vehicle field and be a car salesman. I know someone who's blind who's currently a car salesman right now, and he's really good at it.
I love that. That's so great.
Yeah, exactly. So
there truly are no limits. Totally. Maybe you can't have exactly what you want, but you can have some version of it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I mean, with technology now, like, self-driving cars will be out in no time too, right? So I mean, that's what we hope for anyway. So
yeah. I'm wondering, like, with the singing and the performing, do people ever tell you that because you're blind and you're singing and everything, you're inspiring?
See, here's the complicated thing. There's some people that will come up to me and say, like, your message is very inspiring, which my message has always been to share love and peace and all of that. There's certainly people that, especially in countries like India and, those places like that, where they don't really see blind people being very independent, because a lot of the time, unfortunately, that doesn't mean we can't be independent out there in India. It's just this unfortunate stigma in some way that, stops people from, like it really shelters their kids. I'll give you an example of a buddy of mine. He's originally from India as well. He had retinoblastoma eye cancer around the same age as I did. And his father left the family because he couldn't handle having a blind child, which was really sad. But, his mom, never backed down. And she actually encouraged him to be very independent. And now he's one of the top bank managers in India right now. his mom passed away, and he's been doing it all by himself. He's taking care of his sister. He's managing a bank. He's doing quite a bit of things. And so, you admire stories like that. And I think when people say that you're inspiring because you're blind, I personally feel as, I don't necessarily have too much of an issue with it. And the reason why is sometimes, there's different factors, right? So when I think it's really important to talk to people and ask them why they feel that way, right? Because sometimes sometimes, and I've been guilty of this too in the past, where I would just jump to different conclusions about, oh, maybe this person's saying that out of pity, or maybe it's discrimination. But in reality, some people, they're just inspired in a way that it was eye-opening for them because they've never seen that before. So sometimes it's good to, sit down with those people and, talk about it and be like, this is something normal that I do. But I think it's also, we have to understand the factors, right? Some people come from different countries. They haven't ever seen that in that other country, and blindness is portrayed as something else in those other countries. So when they come out here, they don't understand. It's very eye-opening for them. And sometimes, some people will come up to you and say, hey man, like I'm actually going blind, but seeing you and how you carry yourself and showing that, blindness isn't a hindrance to you. And it's beautiful. Some of the answers you'll get from some people, and it really comes from their heart. You know what I mean? And some people just can't imagine life without sight. And that's where it all comes from. I think also, though, I'm definitely trying to motivate people through my music more so than anything else. It's just we need to sit down with people and talk with them, and honestly, it'll give those people, because sometimes people just want to open up to you, you know what I mean, and open their hearts up to you and just talk about how they're feeling. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think it necessarily always has to come down to discrimination. I think it's just people just curious and wanting to know more. And I think it's more that they inspire themselves in a way, because it's eye-opening for them. It really gives them another perspective. And I think with that other perspective, it's gonna slowly end the stigma even that surrounds us here as well.
I'm assuming you've probably had a lot of media coverage in your career, and I'm just curious if the focus is often on the fact that you're blind, or like is that an issue where you're kind of like you want them to know you for your music, but you're known as the blind musician, or am I totally just dreaming this up?
You know what? Actually, it's very interesting that you asked that, because blindness is mentioned very briefly, but
Nice.
it's more about my music.
That's awesome. That's so
it is
great.
more about
that's
my
really
music.
good.
And that is, and I give a lot of credit to the director of the show that I was on, the Saregama show, because in that show, people, they obviously have the channel has this thing where they want to show people, they want to make people more emotional. So they'll show, oh my God, this person is blind. Oh,
of course.
oh.
Yeah.
But I mean, we talked about it, and I said, look, the main thing is I want to be portrayed in a way that's more positive, that's more like I'm like everybody else. And the director was really on board with that. And when he did that, I think people really started to realize more like, okay, wow, he's blind, and wow, he's doing all of that, but that's not, that really doesn't define his, like, sure, I think music from within me, the way I feel it is because of my blindness in some way, because I feel things differently, I enjoy things in different ways. People use their sight, but I have to use my other senses. But at the same time, people realize that, man, there's so much more to a person than just being a blind musician. And I think I've been very lucky in that way, that for most people I've interacted with, they rarely concentrate on the blindness aspect of things. And for me, it's just seeing the world through music, right? So
yeah, exactly. What about your fans? I'm this is silly, but I'm thinking, do people ask for your autograph, and how do you navigate that if that happens?
Sometimes it turns out really well, and sometimes it turns out like I'm just like writing a donut all over the place. So I mean, like,
not a lot of personalized messages then.
Oh, it'd just be a bunch of circles.
Yeah.
Gangsta for life. Yeah, but I definitely try to give autographs to people, or if not, like, I definitely like to take pictures with other people as well, because I think that's really important to do as well. And just interacting with fans and doing all of that in person.
I was wondering if you would sing something for us.
Absolutely. Man, you're putting me on the spot here. Okay. Here it goes. Oh, yeah. No summer's hot, no warm July, no harvest moon to light one tender August night. No first of spring, no falling leaves, not even time for birds to fly through southern skies. No Libra sun, no Halloween, no giving thanks to all the Christmas joy you bring. But what it is, though old, so new, fit to fill your heart like no three words could ever do. I just call to say I love you, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart.
Woohoo! Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I didn't know she was going to ask you to do that. That's awesome. Thank you.
I hope you guys liked it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't wait for that gala in the fall. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jugpreet. You're such a positive person, and I know our listeners are going to love listening to all your wise words and your beautiful song too. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
You've been listening to Limitless, the Blind Beginnings podcast. I want to thank my co-host Kolby for being here today. And thanks again to our awesome guest, Juggy, also known as Jugpreet Bajwa.
Thanks.
For more information on Blind Beginnings and its mission to inspire and support children and youth who are blind or partially sighted and their families, visit www.blindbeginnings.ca.